Well, the big story today, mixed up. Good afternoon to you. I am Dylan Radigan, back in New York. Nice to see you. When it comes to politics in this country, we've got plenty of cooks in the kitchen, except they're whipping up a recipe for disaster. The Senate this afternoon voting down the same payroll tax cut extension they defeated last week, wasting all of our time on yet another bogus debate about jobs when Americans simply don't have time to waste. Let's compare shopping lists, if you will. First, here's Congress. They want to talk payroll tax cuts, emergency unemployment benefits, Medicare reimbursement rates, and oh yeah, don't let the government shut down next week. That's their to-do list. How about America's to-do list? Well, we need 30 million jobs and a wave of innovation in healthcare, energy independence, and education. You get the point. Nothing on Washington's list even comes close to serving the interests of the American people to drive investment in job creation to solve our problems. Remember, a payroll tax cut doesn't even help if you don't have a paycheck, and 1 in 5 of us don't. Americans have ordered jobs, 30 million of them to be exact. We have all the ingredients to cook them up, people who are ready to work, problems to be solved, we just reviewed the list, and the money, albeit offshore in a trade deficit or locked in the swaps market, available were we to reform banking, taxes, and trade to drive investment. We have all the ingredients. But we quite simply have the wrong recipe, one being baked by special interests purchasing our politicians to prevent them from initiating the very investment that we so desperately need. We start with friend of the show, Republican Senator Tom Coburn of the Finance Committee. We can't even talk about these things, Senator, if we don't know what's going on. You recently, I guess just in the past day, made a significant victory for all of us simply in letting us be better informed. Tell us about the new disclosures that you were just able to push in there.
Well, we haven't got it done yet. We've introduced it, but there's only one agency of the federal government that knows all their programs, and that's the Department of Education. All the rest of the agencies have no idea what programs they're managing. So we have a bill that's the Americans' Right to Know Act, and what it says is every agency every year has got to put online what they're doing, what the programs are, how much overhead there's associated with them, what the duplication is in the rest of the government. We need all of those things out there so we can see. And when educating America about our inefficiencies is the best way I know to change it.
I could not agree with that more. And if you look at it, whether in your professional past history as a medical doctor, or if you look at any of our colleagues and friends who work in businesses like engineering, building bridges, a real mathematical problem solving, is it possible for a doctor or an engineer to solve a problem that he or she does not have the information to even assess?
Oh, that's right. You know, in February of this year, the GAO put out a report on duplication, the first third of the government, which listed hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in duplication, and the Congress has done nothing about eliminating it.
Excuse me.
So
do you anticipate resistance to this transparency agenda?
No. Yeah, I do. There'll be everybody say, well, you can't make the agencies do that. That's just more work for the agencies. Well, the only way we're ever going to get control of this government, and this has nothing to do with government employees. We have a lot of great government employees. But we need to know what we're doing. We need to know what the effect is that it's having, and whether or not we're duplicating things, and what it costs to do it versus maybe doing it a different way or not doing it at all. And remember that $1.4 trillion, what we spend every year, comes through the discretionary budget, not the mandate, not Medicare, not Social Security, not Medicaid, not veterans. It comes through the discretionary. And when you have hundreds of billions of dollars every year being spent on programs, just a couple of examples.
Please.
We have 82 federal teacher training programs. 82.
Totally. And you're saying there's no coordination between any of those two programs?
None of them.
So I'm running a program, you're running a program, and 80 other people are, and I'm doing what I want, you're doing what you want. We don't even talk?
Yeah, and then there's the constitutional question: is it the role of the federal government to train teachers in Oklahoma? Or is that Oklahoma's
states' right? Sure.
So it just, and look, where we find ourselves as a nation is we've spent 40 years growing a government that has become highly ineffective and highly inefficient. and we're going to have to make tough choices over the next 2 years to get our fiscal house in order.
Yeah.
And if we're going to truly create jobs, what we have to do is every dollar that the government spends has to be done properly, not wasteful, not duplicated, and not associated with fraud, which is, there's $200 billion worth of fraud per year coming out of the federal government.
And that's why I'm so enthusiastic about what you're trying to do, because, again, if we don't have the visibility, we can't even make the assessment till you have a legitimate debate. And so I compliment you on that effort. Can I ask you about the electoral system itself for a second, as we're watching this debate for 2012 develop? And you and I have had this conversation a couple of times. You know that I firmly believe that we need to amend the Constitution in a way that separates business and state in a meaningful way. You have aggressively made the case about the incumbency bias. There's also issues with gerrymandering. There's issues in the primary system, issues with disproportionate power for people like me because I'm on TV, which distorts the voice. At the end of the day, how do we govern a country where the electoral machine, the instrument that we use to measure the intentions of the people, the device or the tool, like measuring the temperature on a turkey, simply doesn't work because it's either being sold at auction, biased by incumbency or the media, or gerrymandered in some fashion? And how do you suggest, if you disagree with my assertion on money per se, that we get an electoral system that can actually reflect the desire and intention of the American people as opposed to what we have now?
Yeah, I do disagree with you, Dylan. I think the problem, you're treating symptoms of the problem. The problem's much bigger than that. The problem is if you can buy me, no matter what rules you put, if there's any way you can buy me, then I'm of no value to the people of Oklahoma or this country. So how do you fix that problem? What you do is first of all, you eliminate long-term service by term limits and let the American people decide what that is. Number two is the voters have the ability to fix this in the next few elections. Don't keep re-electing career politicians. Our problem is these are great people, but the vast majority of them have no real-world experience outside of politics, and their goal is the next election, not the problems of the country. Yeah. So if our focus is fixing the problem, no matter what happens to us in election, we're going to get a lot of problems solved. If our focus is who's going to be in power and who's going to be here the next election, the problems take short shrift. They're second behind what the primary goal of the politician is. So I'm a self-term limited senator. I agreed to never serve more than 2 terms. I won't serve more than 2 terms. That gives me a tremendous amount of power because I'm going to do what's in the best interest of the country, and I don't care what somebody says or whether they support my election, or because I'm not having another election.
Understood. At the same time, the ability to manipulate policy and prevent policy from happening because of the dependence on the money and the existence of the secret money is something that is so distorting that, in addition to some of the points that you bring up, I maintain my objection to those things as well. But we'll continue that debate. I want to ask you, if I can, for a second, away from the issues themselves, what your point of view is on the Republican field and the ascendancy of Newt Gingrich as the potential candidate for president from your party.
Well, I think, first of all, I think the race is too big of a mistake right now that we got all this focus. If you look back historically, who's ahead now hardly is ever the nominee. I think our problems are so big, we ought to be focusing on the problems. The second point I'd make is none of them have, including our president, has said, tried to communicate what the real problems are to the country and what their solutions are to fix these very real problems. We're not hearing that.
Nope.
We're hearing everything but that. Where's your hardcore plan to fix our country, to put people back to work? How are you going to do it? How are you going to solve the entitlement problem and still maintain adequate health care for seniors? How are you going to get the country together? Our problem right now is we haven't had any leadership to go out and explain and treat American people like adults, saying, here's the problems we have. Everybody's going to take a pinch. So those that are more wealthy are going to take more of a pinch. But the way we get out of this problem is this, and list it out. I've done that. I've put out $9 trillion worth of changes, taken a lot of heat on it. But if we were to do, even though my plan isn't totally right, I readily admit that, if we were to do what I suggest tomorrow, which is $1 trillion in tax increases, okay, and $1 trillion out of the Pentagon, but it's $9 trillion total, we would be rolling in this country economically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with your assessment more forcefully, specifically the absence of the very framing of the conversation that this country, in my view, and I clearly in your view, is desperate for in 2012, and neither the president nor the current contenders for the nomination are even engaging in that way. I believe that voices like yours, mine, and so many others, louder the better, are our best chance to do that, Senator, and I thank you for giving me some of your time, and I congratulate you once again on your efforts for that first step of disclosure.
All right, good to see you.
You as well. Talk to you soon. Coming up here on the DR Show, how to lose $1 billion. John Corzine testifies today on Capitol Hill on the MF Global fallout. Did we get anything other than oops?